Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time that we talked about Palla, kind eldest sister, and probably the thing that's kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. Yep, that thing. Enjoy the video.
Let the lesson begin.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Fire Emblem Heroes video. I am back. I had a little bit of a busy week, and I promise you that I am not the danger, for those of you that caught that reference. Anyways, today's video is going to talk about Palla, which I think is a little bit overdue, but honestly, it may help you consider whether she's important now or in the future, of course, and our dual flying and its best candidates, both F2P and pay to win. Tomorrow's video, of course, will cover the brand new heroes, at least my impressions on it, and I'll cover the free stuff and whether it's even worth spending orbs on whatever is brand new. There's going to be a couple other topics that I'll likely cover in the week coming, but it should be back to a regular schedule as of then. So, Palla's topic of today's video, plus the dual flying candidates, of course, to make your arena easier or more convenient, depends the way you look at it. So, stat spread actually didn't end up the way I thought it was on my initial impressions, but I guess it was kind of visible there anyways. Regardless, she is basically ALTINA, to be honest with you guys. Like, that's what it feels like. However, her weapon gives her adaptive damage and Canto, which is a pretty decent advantage over ALTINA, and of course that she can benefit from blessings as a carry unit, meaning that if you run 3 or 4 mythics, that she'll get those stats and potentially do some cool things. But other than that, I don't think there's much more to it, because she is basically ALTINA, but with adaptive damage and Canto, and those are decent advantages, but honestly, is it enough? Let's see. Okay, so first up is her base build. So she comes with a Rally Plus, Rhine, and our Dual Flying 4, which is great for inheriting her off to someone who might be more of an arena player. Other than that, there's not much more to talk about here. The first and most obvious build you'll probably think about is the Distant Counter Vantage build for Palla. Now, this does benefit from your traditional flyer tanks or carries, which is ward flyers or gold flyers stacking. She comes with Rhine, which is pretty good. Although it only benefits the res portion, most enemies do tend to have lower res than defense, but that's not always the case. So that means that you'd be favoring adapting lower res. But she can't really benefit from Null Sea Disrupt, which is a huge advantage for Winter ALTINA when you think about it, and that may set her back. And also, in Astra Season, there might be a little bit too much red overlap. So if you're using Regan, Plumeria, or ALTINA already, you're going to be very red heavy and therefore run into some disadvantages. I'm not the biggest fan of this, although I feel there is some potential if you really liked Palla. It's not a bad unit per se, but there is definitely role overlap and nothing necessarily special that you couldn't like basically do with ALTINA, for example, with the right setups. Because while ALTINA can't benefit from mythic blessings, she can benefit from more supports on her team by using those other slots to support her with more goads or wards potentially. So, and of course Twin Blades, which ALTINA has over her. So give or take, it's cool, but it's already something that's overlapped. Now there is something that I do appreciate Palla for, and that would be the Galeforce and Canto synergy. So she can definitely favor partners like Valoria, who will reduce her Galeforce substantially or potentially refuel the Bridal Heron, of course, and therefore accelerate Galeforce to a much more consistent number, special charge, and then use Canto to get into a good position. Now, synergizing this with other Canto users, whether that's like through Near Trace, or let's say Regan, or whatever future Canto users we have in the game, this means that she actually ends up being a fairly good and consistent Galeforce user. I've used Galeforce ALTINA myself, but the one thing she's lacking, of course, is the Canto ability. Now, Vantage on here in the B slot isn't necessary, like it's not really necessary. It can be a pretty flex slot if you wanted it to be. Wings of Mercy, Escape Route, Desperation, Dive Bomb, whatever. It's really up to you. Vantage is just there to maybe give you some enemy phase potential, but essentially it's not that important. So I do like this. It does require your traditional Galeforce supports, but if there is one place that I would use her, it would probably be here, because Canto in the weapon is pretty good, and so is adaptive damage to get those consistent kills. That's pretty much my take though on Palla. I think if you like Palla, you probably already have her or use her, but maybe this is just to affirm it for anyone else who is maybe on the fence about it. At the end of the day, the best use of your spark or summons is going to be not, which I've already covered in many other videos, but there is my take on Palla. So maybe you're a Palla fan or we're thinking about it. Maybe when she comes back, this is definitely the way to go about it. Now, the more pressing matter to discuss, of course, is our Duel Flying 4. And if you didn't know the actual candidates for it, well, there it is over my face and the whole screen. There's actually quite a few of them. And you may think there's actually quite a few of them, but this list is pretty impractical to most people, actually, because it is predominantly 5 stars or seasonals or just really rare units in general. As you can see here, there's not actually that many options for more of the F2P type of player who may not have plus 10s of a lot of these units. So what I'll do is I'll cover the F2P units and then we'll go into the premium options. That's really it. That's the F2P options, folks. There's not that many, as you can see. Now, I do think that the S candidates here, like the best candidates you can give our Duel Flying 4 if you're a F2P player, is going to be a Versa and Air. Now, most people probably foddered off Air in New Year's Air for Tamari, but if you haven't, she is a decent option for that, and that's because the dagger flexibility is pretty good, and ranged in general are always good to add to a core for 2 reasons, and I'll repeat them. The first one is they will last longer in terms of the BST creep, which is like the stat creep, meaning right now Ashnard here is like 170, he gets upgraded to 180. Right now we have stuff like Sedith, who's 175, and that means the next stat creep will bring units up to 180 if you're a melee. This means literally in a year's time, if there's a melee unit released, then that unit won't even require the dual skill. However, with ranged units, it's still catching up there. It could be multiple years before something like a Versa or Air has a comparable unit that's given for free, if it even happens, where they don't have to use a dual skill. So just by that investment alone, a Versa and Air are still up there as good candidates for it. But of course, being ranged also allows you to manipulate AI in a way that's very favorable in Arena by causing rally loops and threatening your enemy. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that probably deserves a visit to the Twitch channel, link in the description of course, and watching some of my Arena or AR gameplay where you're able to take advantage of enemy rally loops and put yourself in an advantageous position. Running full melee, which I've done many times, isn't as fun as it looks, even if it might feel like someone like Ashnard or Shida or Palla might be better for your core. That's not always the case, and having ranged is huge. Now, another really good thing to think about here, and maybe a reason to necessarily not even fodder our Duel Flying 4 at all, is potentially the upcoming Versus Night Refine. This could happen within a year's time, and if you looked at the other Grima kind of like Pelagian refines that have happened in the past year, you'll notice that they are pretty good. Most of them are pretty good, or the weapon itself is pretty good, focusing on a sort of debuff and I get stronger type of style, and a Versus Night isn't there. It just like debuffs and that's it. So I could totally expect this weapon to get a nice refine, a nice boost, which could definitely propel a Versa to even be better than some of the premium our Duel Flying 4 options that I'll discuss in a moment, which again might be a good idea to just hold your R Duel Flying 4 and see what that might bring in about a year's time. A Versa is very popular. I could see that happening to be a pretty decent refine. The other candidates here, Shida at least has Flashing Blade, which is unique to to her, and flyers can use it and can set up some nice Galeforce hidden runs. Palla could be pretty good in an all-flyer team in Arena if you happen to run that. And Fiora, unfortunately, has absolutely nothing going for her and is not a good candidate for our Duel Flying 4. So yeah, with that being said though, I do want to talk about the premium options, which are an insane amount. I did not even realize we had this many to talk about or to even discuss, but yeah, we don't have a lot of free red flyers, and we have a lot of blue lance flyers, for example, or green axe calves lately, but when it comes to flyers that are red, there's a lot of premium and seasonal options. Now, as what I mentioned before, if you're a range that's already going to put you in either the S or A tiers, in my opinion, for basically investment here, with those that we know have good refines, such as Noe being up there is probably the best option for our Duel Flying 4, not only providing supportive capabilities, but great mobility in Arena, which otherwise doesn't have great mobility options because of the nature of having to use Rally Pluses for higher scoring. Most recently released Shanna, Bridal Shannon has a preference weapon, which is good for causing true damage on those bulky foes, and of course, that's being ranged, and Flyer does have some other advantages such as guidance, but not necessarily unique to her. The true damage makes her stand out. The range and the power of being a recent unit will put her up there. Tana is due for a refine very soon, actually, so that is why I'm putting her up there, because I could expect already with the type of weapon she has, which was already mobility in nature, adding more to that should make her great. The dancers are up there in S. If you can afford to use dance for the score hit, will be great options to provide you some arena ease. Now that puts the A, Bs, and Cs in more of a, I wouldn't really invest in them, but they could be pretty good options, such as a plus 10. Palla would be really good because of Kanto. Barn, if you run near trace, could also be really good, or mostly a Beast Dragon team in general for his high mobility. Young Sheeta, for example, has that effectiveness, so really good matchups across the board. And then you have, again, some range units with no preference weapons, some potential refines in the future, including Young Tiki, NY Gunthra, Anand, and Legyarn, and then do not invest with basically BC, where they're not going to get any refines and they're completely forgotten about in the game. Now at the bottom there is not what you might think. It's not the bottom tier investments. It is actually investments which you probably should do if you are close to a plus 10 or about to hit plus 10 or already have plus 10, which is obviously Plumeria, Altina, Mira, Ryoma, and Duel Dorothea. If those are at plus 10 for you or near plus 10, they are going to be by far your best investments for our Duel Flying 4 because of the nature of being able to use them in both Arena and Ether Raids, or I guess Resonant Battles, but either way, being a dancer is going to be really good. So these are the premium options, and obviously they are way more to think about, but I don't really think this list applies to most of you. If you already have a plus 10 or close to a plus 10 of this, you probably already invested. But if you were on the fence about it, then here is what I think about those. So to kind of TLDR everything here with our Duel Flying 4, it's not the most impressive of releases, definitely not. It does benefit somebody who's a Ryoma user, considering all the benefits and buffs that he's gotten recently. But at the end of the day, both Palla and our Duel Flying 4 are not that impressive, and honestly I would just wait until Versus Night gets refined to really think about where to put it, or just have fun with a one-off of Palla until something better comes out. Maybe a Galeforce strategy could be something to add to your repertoire. With that being said, folks, I am out of here for today, but tomorrow's video should cover the brand new units, my impressions on them, and likely me pressing fast forward as we skip through to something later, which will be more fun to look at. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Much love. Peace.
It's over.